Everyone seems to agree that the federal budget process is broken. Broken is the usual word, and I had it in my notes before Bill used it. But there's not much agreement on what that means, or what ought to be done about it, or what can realistically happen in our current state of polarized politics and policy gridlock. So I want to start with real basics. Organizations, institutions, governments, whatever, need a budget. That means a plan for what activities they will undertake in the upcoming period, what these activities are likely to cost, and how they will be paid for, whether by revenues of some sort or by borrowing. Now, it's a good thing, if you're one of these institutions or governments, to have an orderly process for making those decisions that the participants understand and respect, and that isn't frustratingly complicated or time-consuming. And in a democracy, or indeed almost any place, it's good if the public understands the process and feels effectively represented in it. It's also good if the process has a defined beginning and end and finishes on schedule so that the people charged with getting the work done can get on with the job. It's desirable to plan ahead and not be surprised by unexpected costs that could have been anticipated, to have reasonable stability so that the organization isn't lurching to respond to constantly changing sets of priorities. But flexibility is nice too, and the process must enable the participants to respond to changing circumstances, perceived needs and values, and to move the organization or the country in a new direction. Now, all of that sounds very nice, but no organization, none that I've ever been associated with, has a perfect process for making budget decisions, and no process can make budget decision-making smooth or easy, ever, anywhere. Budget making is inherently contentious because resources are limited and participants typically have extremely diverse and strongly held views about what the organization or the government ought to do and how it ought to pay for it. At the present moment in the United States, those views are extremely polarized, and participants are angry and suspicious of each other, which never helps any process. On top of that, the United States government has a constitution explicitly dedicated to impeding quick and orderly decision-making. The separation of powers intentionally makes decision-making difficult and requires negotiation and compromise between House and Senate and between the executive and the legislative, not to mention the Supreme Court. If any of you are depressed by the current political scene, I recommend reading about the election of 1800. It was worse, and it'll make you feel better. Even in normal times, if we ever have normal times, big decisions like budget require skill and patience in our government, even when the same party controls the branches. It's alleged to be worse under divided government. The rhetoric is certainly more strident, although historically divided government has not performed all that badly. The fundamental problem is that our political system is broken because we've forgotten that our Constitution requires compromise and negotiation to move the country forward on any contentious decision. It isn't so much the polarization that afflicts us, it's the abandonment of the efforts to compromise across divisions. The result is gridlock and anger on many fronts: budget-related issues, foreign policy, basic role and size of the federal government, the role of the states, the confirmation of appointees, you name it. Changing the budget process will not repair our broken political system. Now, I'm not despairing. American institutions are very resilient. The political system has been through worse and recovered. But in focusing on the budget process, we must realize that we are having a contingent conversation. We are saying if we had the political leadership that really wanted to make hard decisions about what the government should do and how to pay for it, not just this year but into the future, what changes in the process would help them do that? And that's a question that former Senator Pete Domenici and I, under the auspices of the Bipartisan Policy Center, set out to answer with some help from Bill Hoagland and a bunch of other experts. And we came out last July with this report, which I commend to you.